This is the Algebra 1 Summer School, Unit 6, Lesson 1, Practice 2, Factor to Solve a Quadratic practice video. All right, in this practice video, I'm going to do numbers 1, 3, and 6. These are all solving quadratics by factoring. All right, so let's start with number 1. I have x squared minus 24x plus 144. All right, this is a trinomial, and the way that we factor trinomials is by the method of split the middle. Remember that there's a 1 in front of this x squared. So I'm going to multiply the 1 and the 144. That gives me 144, and that means I need to find two numbers that multiply to 144 and add to negative 24. Those numbers are going to be negative 12 and negative 12. Once I pick my numbers, I'm going to go ahead and split the middle. When I split the middle, I'm going to write the first term down, x squared, the last term down, plus 144, and split the middle, this negative 24x, with negative 12x minus 12x. From there, I'm going to go ahead and do the method of grouping, which takes the first two terms in a group, the second two terms in a group. Once I group them, I'm going to look for a GCF. The GCF between x squared and negative 12x is x, and I'm going to divide that x out of each term. Doing that gives me x minus 12 left in the parentheses. Now looking at this second set of parentheses here, the first term is negative, which means my GCF is going to be negative. When I'm factoring out this negative, they seem to have a negative 12 as the GCF. So when I divide out negative 12, I'm left with x minus 12. Well, we have talked every single time we've done a split the middle problem about how the good news is that I want these two parentheses to be exactly the same, x minus 12. When that happens, I know I did the problem correctly. That gives me my final factored form of x minus 12 times x minus 12. Once it's factored and set equal to 0, the zero product law tells me that I take each factor, and if I set them equal to 0, I will find the solutions. So from that problem, if I add 12 to both sides, I'm going to get that x equals 12 is one solution. Then on this next problem, if I add 12 over here, it also seems that x equals 12 is the second solution. So the same number is both solutions to the quadratic. All right, now let's look at number 3. Number 3 is also a trinomial. There are 3 terms, but this time there's a leading coefficient of 3. So I'm going to start by multiplying the 3 and the 2. That's 6. So I need to find two numbers that multiply to 6 and add to negative 5. These two numbers end up being negative 3 and negative 2. Negative 3 times negative 2 is positive 6. Negative 3 minus 2 is negative 5. Now let's go ahead and split the middle. So I'm going to have 3x squared minus 3x minus 2x plus 2. Now I'm going to group the first two terms together and the last two terms together and look for GCFs for each set of parentheses. In the first parentheses, it appears that 3x is the GCF. So when I divide 3x out of each term, I'm left with x minus 1. Because this second set of parentheses has a negative as the first term, my GCF is negative, and the GCF appears to be negative 2. So I'm going to divide out a negative 2, and I'm going to be left with x minus 1. Just like the last problem, we know we did things right because I have x minus 1 in both sets of parentheses. That allows me to write my final factored form as 3x minus 2 times x minus 1. Now, in order to find the roots, the solutions, I'm going to take each factor and set it equal to 0. When I set those factors equal to 0, it allows me to find the solutions to the quadratic. So I'm going to start by adding 2 to both sides, which gives me 3x equals 2. Then I'm going to divide by 3, and one solution I find is x equals 2 over 3. The other factor I get by adding 1 to both sides of the equation and x equals 1 is the second solution to this problem. Now the last polynomial that I'm going to look at is 2x squared minus 10x. This is binomial, but it is not one where I can do difference of squares. There is a minus sign in the middle, but I can't take the square root of 2 or 10. So remember that every time you factor, the first thing you need to look for is a GCF. In this problem, 2x squared minus 10x, there is a GCF, and it is 2x. This lets me divide 2x out of each term. 2x squared divided by 2x is 1x, and negative 10x divided by 2 is negative 5. Now that I've factored using a GCF here, I can set each factor equal to 0 using the zero product law. So I have 2x equals 0 and x minus 5 equals 0. On the right-hand factor, to get x by itself, I'm going to divide by 2. And that gives me x equals 0 is one of the solutions. And then for x minus 5, I'm going to add 5 to both sides, which gives me x equals 5 as the last solution. All right, so that's a few problems from Solving by Factoring Practice 2. There are 12 problems total on that practice. The answers are on the back of it, and the answer key is posted to Canvas. If you have other questions, you need to come into office hours and ask your instructor for help.